Now, from Wish TV, your local news source, this is All Indiana Politics.
Good morning and welcome to All Indiana Politics. I'm Garrett Bergquist. Phil Sanchez is off today. We begin this morning just 9 days from Indiana's primary election. It's been a relatively low-key build-up to the May 3rd voting. It also comes as Republicans around the country push for improved election security and other changes as we approach the presidential election of 2024. And joining us now is Secretary of State Holly Sullivan. Madam Secretary, thank you for joining us. Are we ready for this election?
Absolutely. We are a week into early voting for the primary on May 3rd here in Indiana.
Now, what do you hope to learn from this election cycle that you can apply to the general election this fall and then looking ahead to 2024?
Thank you. Great question. We are hoping that Hoosiers will continue to turn out in high numbers, just like we experienced in 2020. And then we'll continue to put into process our post-election audits. We'll be doing 4 of those after the primary and 10 of those after our general.
And I do want to touch on those post-election audits. We keep seeing these national concerns over voting security, including from many within your own party. Are our elections secure? Tell me about those post-election audits.
Right. No, the post-election audits are standard practice, quite honestly, private industry and in government, right? We take the process that we have in place and we make sure that the standardized approach that we use, the electronic portion with the paper and the human input, all are efficient and making sure that each and every practice within that process is properly executed. It also gives us the ability to educate our voters on the results. And just as we saw in 2020, we did 5 post-election audits. Every single result for state, local, and federal races were exactly as reported on election night. So that's a huge confidence booster. And we know that confidence in the electoral process is part of turnout, and we want high Hoosier turnout.
So based off of all that, are our elections secure here in the state of Indiana?
Absolutely. We have a very secure process. It is also extremely transparent, so Hoosiers can engage in the process, learn the entire process, and be a part of it. It is secure, and we are putting all efforts to ensure that we continue to increase securities as we move forward. Anytime that you have electronics integrated with human processes, we take extra effort to ensure security. And just this last session, we added security around the absentee ballot applications, as well as our cybersecurity contract was extended and paid for by the state legislature. So I know Indiana does an amazing job, and all 92 counties, their local election administrators are doing exactly that, implementing those safeguards so that Hoosiers can be very confident that their vote is going to be counted accurately, quickly, and they can be rest assured that the Hoosier election process is safe and secure.
A lot of the concerns tend to involve the electronic voting machines. Should more counties in Indiana move back to relying on paper ballots?
We have heard different aspects of concerns around the election process, and I can reassure you as the Chief Elections Officer, right now in the state of Indiana, we use a hybrid. We use the electronic direct record equipment in each county, but we also use paper trail to be able to allow Hoosiers to look at their ballot on a piece of paper, verify it before they cast. It also allows me as the Chief Elections Officer to have a more timely method for any recounts that are requested, or to be able to do exactly what we talked about with audits, doubling the amount of audits that we do in 2022. So I think the fact that our legislature is very proactive and made sure that we had not only the direct record electronic equipment in our state, we also have added the paper trails so that Hoosiers can use both.
So when voters step into the voting booth on Election Day or in the days leading up to it, what can they do to help ensure that the process moves smoothly?
I think being prepared to vote is extremely important. Every voter can go to indianavoters.com. At that one website, you can verify your voter registration is valid and accurate. You can look up your sample ballot and be prepared to vote when you get to the polling locations. You can check your polling locations, map them, and know the times in which they are open.
Secretary of State Holly Sullivan, thank you for joining us today.
It was an honor. Thanks for the invite.
Coming up, the chairman and CEO for Lilly takes aim at Indiana's policies on education, inclusion, and healthcare, and says the state's failure could threaten its economy. The speech and the reaction next on All Indiana Politics. Welcome back to All Indiana Politics. Let's talk now about that extraordinary speech from the chairman and CEO of Eli Lilly and Company. Dave Ricks chastised Indiana state leaders for their focus on things like low cost of living. He says the state must focus more on improving education, lowering healthcare costs, and increasing diversity if it expects to continue to fight to bring jobs to Indiana. Our Richard Essex has more.
The health of our citizens and the education level of our citizens in what will increasingly be an economy driven by ideas, not just by putting things together.
As the CEO and chairman of one of the largest employers in the state, his comments are taken seriously. David Ricks says Indiana is not up to the challenge of the new economy. He cites national data that shows Indiana does well in the cost of living, cost of doing business, and business climate. However, our liabilities, he says, are dragging us down.
Our education attainment in the state is not good. The ability to reskill the workforce, I think, could improve. Health, life, and inclusion overall, I think conditions rank poorly nationally in our state. And then workforce preparedness, also related to reskilling, is a liability for us.
Rick says close to a third of traditional jobs will be replaced in the next decade in favor of math and science-heavy positions. He says this is critical to Lilly's core business. According to his data, only a third of Indiana high school students pass the state standardized math test, and only 20% go on to earn a bachelor's degree.
Hoosiers today have relatively low performance on national metrics of education.
Quality of life or quality of the healthy workforce is another one of his concerns. He says Indiana's healthcare costs are too high, higher than surrounding states, and too many people are using the available resources, which he says doesn't make Indiana attractive to potential employers.
Who funds this? Companies fund this. And we need to address this to attract more industry to our neighborhood here.
And he says we must include everyone.
Certainly outcomes on all these dimensions for Black and brown communities in Indiana are worse, and we should do something to affect that. And one of the primary things businesses can do is offer good employment.
I asked Kyle Anderson, the Indiana University Kelley School of Business, if Rick's concerns were valid. He says when Amazon was looking for a second headquarters, Indianapolis was on the list, but they passed.
It's not clear that that was directly related to any single issue, but we know that big headquarter projects have not been here, largely because of availability of the skilled workforce.
I'm Richard Essex for Wish TV, wishtv.com, and follow us on Facebook.
Now, the issues Ricks raised ultimately depend on decisions by Indiana's policymakers. Here's what they told me on those comments.
I'm not satisfied where we are in certain rankings, but if you look at what we are attracting to the state of Indiana, we are knocking the cover off the ball. What we do need is more talent and specific types of talent. That starts, early on in the K through 12 pipeline. We got to make sure there's fewer leaks in that pipeline, and then through higher education as well, certificates, credentials, degrees, etc. We have the right ecosystem. We just talked about, we're way ahead of where we've ever been in terms of jobs over the last 5 years. We've added about $100 billion to our GDP since 2017. And so our growth is outpacing all of our neighboring border states, and we aim to continue to be a leader.
The jobs that we've seen that are going to, for example, Intel and going to Columbus, Ohio, they said the reason we're going there is because the state of Ohio is doing a great job investing in their universities and trying to get more kids to go to college and get a 4-year degree. And so that's something that we can do. Obviously, any investment, we have to be able to keep up. We've been lacking investments in education and healthcare in this state for the last 10 years. And as I said earlier, we're seeing the results of this. These expansion of, frankly, Eli Lilly, which is we claim it as our own. We love Eli Lilly. They do an excellent job here in the state. But I think it's just it's a terrible situation when they're going to North Carolina and Boston, Massachusetts, for their investments, because they see that as those states that have done a better job, I believe, than we have when it comes to investing in their population.
I also talked to the leaders of the Indiana House and Senate. House Speaker Todd Houston told me we're continuously looking for ways to make our state a better place, including skilling up our workforce, lowering health care costs, improving educational outcomes, and diversifying state energy policy. And Senate President Pro Tem Roderick Bray told me Senate Republicans agree lowering the high costs of health care in Indiana is critical, which is why we've taken steps to provide price transparency and push industry leaders for action on this important issue. We also place a high priority on education and are committed to continuing to advance our state's education system so it works well for all Hoosiers. Coming up, a Senate candidate in Indiana smokes marijuana on camera in a new ad. Indiana's best political team will talk that and more next on All Indiana Politics. Welcome back to All Indiana Politics as we welcome back our weekly political panel. Let's bring in Republican Whitley Yates and Democrat Brian Gaddy. Brian, let's start with you. Politico and the Cook Political Report have moved the 1st congressional district race to lean Democrat. This is Northwest Indiana's seat. How concerned should Democrats be about holding on to this seat?
I don't think we should be concerned. I think Congressman Maravant's going to hold that seat. It's been a Democratic congressional district for a very long time. The Republicans are making a play for it because it's part of their grand strategy to try to take back the House. They're going to waste a lot of campaign dollars, but in the end, the 1st congressional district will remain in Democrat hands. We will hold that seat, no doubt about it.
And Whitley, Democrats have held this seat for nearly a century. We're still a long way off from November. What's it going to take between now and then to flip this one?
I mean, honestly, the truth of the matter is, I said the exact same thing about Virginia, and we saw what happened there. So the truth of the matter is, it's really about having the right candidate with the right message that appeals to the people. The fact that it's leaning less Democrat and more Republican is actually not a surprise. It's less of a testament to Mervan and more of a testament to the failed leadership in the White House under President Joe Biden. And so you see from the top down how Democrats are being impacted by his lack of leadership.
And Whitley, as a follow-up, how important is it who wins this primary? And Brian, you can certainly jump in on this one as well.
Sure.
I think it's very important who wins the primary. We have 2 very strong candidates running in the 1st congressional district. We have Jennifer Ruth Green, and we also have Blair Milo, both veterans, both with a history of service leadership in the military and professionally. And I think that we have some really strong candidates, and whoever wins is going to have the right message and be able to connect with the people, because a lot of times the people specifically in Northwest Indiana feel like they've been disconnected from the rest of the state and sometimes from the country. And so renewing that investment and allowing the people's voices to actually be heard and hopefully be progressed is what we intend to do on the Republican side.
And Brian, how does this impact your efforts to hold on to the seat?
I don't know why anyone would think the people of Northwest Indiana are disconnected from the rest of the state or the country. Northwest Indiana is a very patriotic part of the state and the country. And many industries, especially the steel industry, came out of Northwest Indiana. We will hold that seat. It's been, like you said yourself, Garrett, it's been a Democratic seat for about a century. And we will hold that seat. Will the Republicans, will they try to give us a run of money for our money? They'll try, but in the end, they will lose. We will hold that seat, guaranteed.
Well, mark his words here so he can apologize when they lose.
Well, we will hold that seat, so be ready to eat your words. I hope you put salt and pepper on them.
I do want to move on to our next topic. This does, however, stay in Northwest Indiana. Hammond Mayor Tom McDermott is running in the Democratic U.S. Senate primary. This week, he released an ad where he lights up a joint in an Illinois backyard. Recreational marijuana is legal in Illinois. He called for legalization of marijuana at the federal and state level. Whitley, a lot of Republicans have changed their minds on this in recent years. Where do you see the party going on this issue?
Let me tell you where we're not going. We're not going to sit in backyards in circles and light up joints. That's where we're not going. I would call his ad half-baked, but clearly he's fully baked. I don't think that McDermott is actually doing what is necessary to change a policy like this. Because the truth of the matter is, instead of sitting kumbaya style, smoking weed in the backyard, what he could be doing is speaking to the other members of his party who actually have the power on a national and federal level to federalize and legalize this. And he's not, right? They're playing off of the fact that this is a very touchy topic specifically for minorities, and they're attempting to use that as a political bargaining chip. It's tacky, it's cheap, and I don't like it.
Brian, McDermott technically broke federal law when he did that, and a lot of Americans still don't trust marijuana. Could this ad backfire on him and on legalization efforts?
We'll have to see. I mean, the voters will ultimately determine whether it was a smart move to have that ad or not. Personally, if it was me, I wouldn't do it. I would never cut an ad like that. But every candidate has a decision to make, and it's up to that candidate whether they want to run a particular ad or not. But ultimately, the decision is going to come down to the voters, and they'll make the decision whether he should have cut that ad or not.
Now, as we discussed earlier in the show, Lilly CEO David Ricks criticized Indiana's education and healthcare outcomes. Indiana's GDP and income figures are growing quite rapidly. Brian, how can we improve those outcomes on healthcare, education, and so forth without jeopardizing our reputation as a business-friendly state?
Well, Indiana is a business-friendly state by the efforts of both parties, but at the same time, we do need to improve our quality of life issues. And one of those issues is we have to make Indiana a state that's welcoming of all people. And that includes the Republicans stop engaging in their hate politics of being against the LGBTQ community. I don't know why they feel like they have to engage in this hate division politics in order to gin up their base, but it's only scaring away potential employers to our state, not to mention it's making young people, Gen Z, millennial young people, not want to stay in this state. We have a very bad brain drain. I know Republicans don't like to talk about that, but too many Hoosiers, they graduate with a college degree in one hand and an airline ticket in the other. We've got to make Indiana a state that is welcoming of all people. And unfortunately, the Republicans are not doing that.
Whitley, your party has controlled all of the levers of power in this state for more than a decade now. We have a massive budget surplus. Why not put some of it toward addressing the education and healthcare issues Rick's highlighted?
That's a really great question. The truth of the matter is we're already doing those things. The beauty of Indiana is that we have fantastic, phenomenal Republican leaders who are doing just that. So the brain and that Brian is talking about, we have an entirely new agency, the Indiana Destination Development Corporation, that is tasked with doing just that, keeping Hoosiers who come here, who go to school, who get educated here, keeping them here, getting them jobs, and making sure that they're happy. I'm speaking, thank you. I'm speaking, thank you. We're keeping them here. We're already upskilling our workforce. We're investing in healthcare for Hoosiers, and not just Hoosiers, but Hoosier minority women when it comes to birthing and making sure that we are having children and we are not seeing the levels of stillbirths here in the state of Indiana. So we're upskilling our workforce. We're investing in telling Indiana's authentic story consistently to keep and retain talent. We're increasing and improving our health. We have a $1 billion new hospital going up for IU Health that's going to be attracting talent, that's going to be providing healthcare at a level never seen in this state before. And so I found it a little interesting that this executive said this, especially considering they're one of the largest pharmaceutical producers in the state, and they were having some issues with the high prices of the insulin that they were producing. And so it's kind of interesting that they would be speaking on this specific topic. More importantly, Brian, you yourself said that Eli
Lilly,
you know,
the problem is that
we got about 30 seconds here. Brian, I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, thanks for not allowing her to filibuster. The problem with Republicans is they're now anti-business. They're all part of this, on this anti-woke campaign or crusade that they're in, they're engaged in. And the fact is, you all are no longer the pro-business party. You even got Marjorie Taylor Greene calling companies communist companies.
At the same time.
Communist companies. So the Republican Party is no longer pro-business. And the CEO Lilly definitely talked about that. You guys are no longer a pro-business party. There's no doubt about it.
We'll have to leave it there. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back in a moment.
You guys are anti-business.
Thank you for joining us for All Indiana Politics. We'll be back here next Sunday morning at 9:30. And you can also find our brand new All Indiana Politics podcast. It's part of the All Indiana Podcast Network at wishtv.com. Have a great rest of your weekend.